But this is why so many women say things like, something feels off, but I can't figure out what it is. Chances are your care provider might not be connecting the dots because women who are postpartum are not usually recognized as perimenopausal too. So this onslaught of and double down of symptoms is often blown off as normal postpartum, when in fact it can be a serious case of peripartum. That's what I'm calling it until I hear something better.
Hi, I'm Missy Macholka, the Menopause Midwife. I'm here to break down all the things about menopause and hormones that seem overly complicated, which is pretty much everything. With over 10 years of experience catching babies and 2 decades of intuitive massage therapy practice, I have spent the last few years deep diving into all things menopause to figure out why so many women are suffering and why there seems to be so much confusion about hormones and menopause. Calling on my midwifery experience and my desire to help women attain and maintain full autonomy, I will stay next to you during this life transition and help to explain the options as you step into your power and find optimal health.
Hello, my lovelies. Today is Monday, February 3rd, 2025. Welcome back to the Menopause Midwife podcast. Today, we're diving into something that's rarely talked about, yet so many of us are living through. It's the intersection of postpartum and perimenopause. Now, if you're thinking, wait, what? Those are two completely different stages of life, I get it. We're taught that postpartum happens in our 20s to 30s after having a baby, and perimenopause happens decades later, somewhere in our late 40s or 50s. But here's the truth. A huge percentage of women are living in both of these worlds at the same time. Literally, in the last 2 days, I have had 2 women standing in this exact intersection and asking me, what can I do? So we'll talk about that a little bit later with some ideas. But here's what's happening. We are having babies later. In the United States, the average age for first-time moms is now 30 years old. You know what? I forgot to look up what it used to be, but I think it was a lot younger. And plenty of us are still expanding our families well into our late 30s and our 40s. Some even into our 50s. I have a friend that just had her second baby and she's 50. And she had her first baby at, I think it was 48 or 49. So awesome for her. But talk about being at the intersection of perimenopause and postpartum. Guess what else starts happening around 40? You guessed it, perimenopause. In the Menoverse, we've started acknowledging that even if you don't have any noticeable symptoms, hormone fluctuations can begin as early as 35 or 40. So we consider you in perimenopause at least by age 40, whether you've had symptoms or not. At least that's what the group of people I hang out with and talk about menopause and perimenopause agree upon. So if you're recovering from childbirth while navigating hormonal shifts at the same time, you are not imagining. You are literally standing at the crossroads of postpartum and perimenopause. I know I keep saying that, but I just want you to hear that you are not alone and you are not crazy. So let's define these 2 phases and kind of see why and how they intersect. There are a lot of misconceptions about this. So let's start with postpartum. Let's define that. It's often described as the first 6 weeks after giving birth. But let's be real, any of you who've had a baby, that is nowhere near the full picture. In reality, postpartum is the entire period of physical and hormonal recovery after pregnancy, which can last months, but more often lasts years. It takes a lot to recover from growing, giving birth to, and breastfeeding or not, either way, raising a little other human. Research shows that it can take up to 2 years for hormones, metabolism, and even brain structures to restabilize after pregnancy. So that pregnancy brain you felt is a real thing. So if you're breastfeeding, your hormones are staying suppressed even longer. So they will delay your recovery even further. There are so many benefits to breastfeeding. Everybody can make the choice for their family, what works best for them. But I am always pro breastfeeding to make sure that we have all of the goodness put in our babies that we can, and all the goodness for mamas, because we know that breastfeeding is beneficial to mamas too. So let's scoot into the definition of perimenopause. Oh, actually, I want to back up for just a second into postpartum. So the official definition is 6 weeks after you give birth. So from the moment the baby is out to 6 weeks after you give birth, that's considered postpartum. I think I might do another little short podcast on that issue because I think that we severely underserve our postpartum women in our country. I don't know how they do it in other countries, but I think that we could do it much better. And I think that women should be offered care for much longer because I believe that we deserve it and oftentimes we need it. So we're moving into perimenopause. It is the transitional phase leading up to menopause when estrogen and progesterone start fluctuating unpredictably like a roller coaster. The like a roller coaster was not in the definition, but I put it there. So, menopause itself, as we know, is just one day. It's defined as 12 consecutive months without a period. So, that day that happens, then you're in menopause. Perimenopause, that can last anywhere from 4 to 10 years before menopause actually happens. Many of us start experiencing hormonal shifts as early as 35 or 40. So even if we don't have obvious symptoms, our hormones can be fluctuating in the background and causing us some of these smaller seeming irritations in the background. Maybe we're not sleeping as well. Maybe we're having a little bit of brain fog. Maybe we're getting fatigued more easily. Maybe we're a little less patient with our families. But this is why so many women say things like, something feels off, but I can't figure out what it is. Chances are your care provider might not be connecting the dots because women who are postpartum are not usually recognized as perimenopausal too. So this onslaught of and double down of symptoms is often blown off as normal postpartum, when in fact it can be a serious case of peripartum. That's what I'm calling it until I hear something better. So, why does this overlap matter? Maybe it's best to start with this question. What do postpartum and perimenopause have in common? Well, what they have in common is the hormones going absolutely off the rails. Like we talked about, roller coaster, off the rails, all the things roller coasters. So after you give birth, estrogen and progesterone, I think you've heard of those before, they crash almost overnight, which is why you might feel like a totally different human within days of giving birth. In perimenopause, estrogen and progesterone start fluctuating unpredictably. Sounds a little similar, doesn't it? They're more fluctuating than dropping into the toilet, but they can also make you feel crazy. So sometimes they're high, sometimes they're low, and sometimes it feels like your body is messing with you just for fun. So here's the kicker. Many of the symptoms in both postpartum and perimenopause are almost identical. Let's think about these few symptoms: brain fog and memory issues. Both postpartum and perimenopause mess with your focus and recall. Don't let anyone tell you there's no such thing as pregnancy brain, mommy brain, or menopause brain. They are all very real and they are all related to hormones, estrogen and progesterone in particular. Thyroid issues. Hormonal shifts can trigger temporary postpartum thyroiditis or long-term thyroid dysfunction in perimenopause. These things are gonna happen to women, and they do, and then they get their TSH tested and their levels are within normal limits and they get blown off. So this is a place where if you are having thyroid issues, please, please, please reach out to a good thyroid doc. So that doesn't necessarily mean an MD. There are naturopaths who are incredible with dealing with thyroid things. I had gone to an MD about my thyroid, had been told that they were going to have to cut half of it out and irradiate it. And I went to my naturopath and we were able to get me under control with herbs and diet and exercise. And to this day, I still have my thyroid. It was never irradiated. And I actually don't even take any medication for it at all. So everybody's case is different, but I want you to know that you have options. And if it's a thyroid thing, work with someone who knows about thyroid. It is very specific. I'm a hormone specialist, not a thyroid specialist. So if someone comes to me and they need some thyroid work, I'm going to point them in a different direction and then work together with that other caregiver to try to give the very best care for that person. So let's talk next about bone health. Postpartum bone loss is a big deal, especially if you're breastfeeding. So it can set you up for osteoporosis later in life if you are not replenishing your vitamin D, which please make sure that it's a D3 plus a K2. If you're wondering which kind to get, hop on my website. Quicksilver Scientific has my very favorite D3K2. It is a liquid. It goes right under your tongue. Huge, amazing absorbability. So that is connected with perimenopausal and menopausal bone loss, which we know for sure. The data show that when you are dealing with osteoporosis and osteopenia of perimenopause and menopause, the very best treatment is not Fosamax, not any of those other drugs, but estradiol. Estradiol is the number one thing for you to take to maintain and even to regrow. I say that very carefully because I don't know how many studies there are about regrowing, but I do know that for maintenance of your bone and to keep them good and strong and not go into the osteoporosis and osteopenia area is estradiol. That is the key. So we'll move on to blood sugar issues and diabetes risk. So postpartum glucose instability, especially if you had gestational diabetes, these increase your risk for type 2 diabetes in perimenopause. So when we're dealing with blood sugar issues in perimenopause, we definitely want to be looking at our diet, number one, our movement, number two, and then there are some other fun little tricks and hacks that you can do with things like berberine, things like GLP-1s, and things like GLP-1 probiotics. I do carry one from Pendulum Probiotics, which is amazing. So it's like the precursors to the GLP-1s. We are going to be learning so much more about those in the next few years. They have just exploded on the market. And I don't think we're going back to life before them. Don't be afraid of them. Learn about them. Use them wisely if you're going to use them. I am a big fan of microdosing GLP-1s and or starting out with the GLP-1 probiotic and seeing if you can increase that in your gut on your own. So lots of options there. Let's talk about heart health and concerns. When you are postpartum, high blood pressure and preeclampsia, if you had either of those during your pregnancy or postpartum, they can increase your risk of heart disease later in life. And guess when that risk starts showing up? You guessed it, perimenopause. So we want to take really good care of our hearts. I will tell you this, that our heart and every other organ in our bodies has estradiol receptors. And so we want to make sure that we get enough estrogen in our bodies to protect our hearts. Let's move on to joint pain and stiffness. Do you ever feel like your body just doesn't move the same way anymore? It's from lack of estrogen. It can be. It helps keep your joints lubricated. And when it drops, you feel that in every joint and every ligament, and you can get sore and painful all the time. That is directly related to estrogen. The other one that I find with joint pain and stiffness is DHEA. It can get a bad rap sometimes, but I am very particular about the DHEA I suggest, and that is by Quicksilver Scientific. It is their DHEA Plus, and that stuff is liquid gold. If you have ever tried DHEA and it has not been a fit for you, please reach out to me. Let's talk about this DHEA. You can dose it down to one tiny, teeny little drop under your tongue, all the way up to a couple of teaspoons if that works for you. Some of my older ladies do use that much and they feel amazing on it. But some people that I have in my practice, they have 1 to 2 drops under their tongue and it is a game changer for them. So do not suffer through joint pain and stiffness. Let's talk about it with me, with someone else. Please find someone to talk to about this and get yourself some care. All right. So this is just the beginning of the symptoms that overlap there are more. And so I've put together a full breakdown of all the overlapping symptoms. You'll see kind of what we talked about, and you'll see a few more. There is a downloadable chart that I made. It'll be available in the show notes and on my website. And I think we might even put it in the next newsletter. So if you want to subscribe to that, you can. So you can see for yourself how these two phases intersect and kind of see where you land. You will find the link in the show notes for sure. But it also pushes me to this point where I don't want to just leave you hanging. What is a peripartum woman to do? This can be a complicated answer, and it hasn't been explored, just like perimenopause, because it can be complicated and you can't just throw a standard protocol at it. So it requires personalization, and Western medicine doesn't love personalization because it takes time and it takes follow up. And so I just wanted to share with you some low hanging fruit to help you start feeling better. Now, in no way is this a protocol. It is just some ideas. And you're going to maybe roll your eyes and be like, I know I've tried diet and exercise and all of this. I'm going to give you some very specific tips in here. And so please hear the actual little tips. These things are short, quick, easy actions. You're already busy enough. So let's just jump in and find some things that we can do really quickly and really easily that will start making us feel better. Now, I am a huge proponent of hormone replacement therapies. And so if you are not breastfeeding, jump in. Jump in with someone who knows what they are doing. If you are breastfeeding, jump in with someone who knows what they're doing. I have a feeling there are some people out there who are helping women who are breastfeeding with some hormones. I don't know any personally, but if you're out there, please reach out to me because I would love to know what you're doing and what your results are. Okay, so let's jump in. I have 4 little nuggets of wisdom to share with you. I think it's wisdom. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. Anyway, this is my number one very favorite thing to do when you cannot figure out how you will function through the next day. I want you to go get 1 bead of sweat on your body every single day. 1 bead. I don't want you to get your whole body sweaty. I don't want you to go to the gym for an hour. I don't want you to go for 20 minutes. I literally want you to go for however long it takes to get 1 bead of sweat. Now, just for reference, when I started this, I was really sick with the thyroiditis, postpartum thyroiditis, and I couldn't figure out what the next step would be. So I said to myself, I am going to go get 1 bead of sweat every day because I have to start working out again. But I didn't feel like I had the time or the energy to relearn how to work out. So I went to the gym, got on the treadmill, put it on like kind of a walk run. And I said, I'm just going to go till I feel 1 bead of sweat. That took 7 minutes. And so every day from that moment on, I would go and I would do my 7 minutes until one day I started getting bored with 7 minutes and I started doing other things and getting sweaty other ways. So I don't care how you get your 1 bead of sweat, but I promise you this will change your game. So run, walk, jump rope, dance in your kitchen, do squats, yoga, anything that you will actually do. I challenge you to do it. Just do it. And I promise you, you will feel better. It changes so many things and it literally pumps your hormones through your body. It pumps your lymph system. It makes you feel better on so many levels. And I know I am beating probably the drum that everybody hears all the time, move your body, but literally 7 minutes. Do not kill yourself. Do not go out there and be like, oh no, I'm going to go get all sweaty if I got myself to the gym. No, walk out after that first bead of sweat because then you will come back the next day and the next day and the next day. Come back, make the habit, and then keep going. So I'll get off that soapbox because that is one of my favorite ones. Number 2, prioritize protein and fiber in your diet. I like to aim for 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight. This is not an easy target to hit. Just try. Just put the number in your head. If your ideal weight is 150 pounds, do your very best to get 150 grams of protein in your body every day. Eat that first so that you are full. It is such a great cheat. It's incredible. It makes you full and you feel great. So Add in lovely greens, veggies, fruits to make up the rest. My favorite cheat though, because it's hard for me sometimes to want to eat breakfast. So what I do is I add perfect aminos. I add their mocha flavor to my coffee in the mornings with some MCT oils and some vital proteins, and I blend that up with my Purity decaf coffee every morning. Sorry, this sounds like an ad, but these are my favorite brands, and I don't get paid to say anything about them. I just do because I love these things. So check out my Insta reel for the protein-packed coffee recipe. I will see if we can link that to the show notes too. But that gets me, I think it's almost 40 grams of protein in my coffee in the morning. So it's a great way to start. I'm almost a third of the way there with my protein intake. So it's pretty amazing. Number 3, if you aren't breastfeeding, consider hormones. We've already said this. Sorry, I am using my notes. Bioidentical, please, and transdermal, please. It may take a few tries to get it right. Hang in there with your practitioner, talk to them, ask them questions, tell them how you are feeling. Know that there are options, different delivery methods, different levels, different dosages. So stick with it. Hang in there. You will figure it out. And I think we already talked about this. If you are breastfeeding, do all the things above, like get your bead of sweat, prioritize protein and fiber, get those things in, and then chat with your naturopath about adding in maybe some Vitex, maybe some progesterone, maybe even vaginal estriol. Every case is so different. You've got to do what's best for you and your baby. So if you are living at this intersection, I see you. If you're recovering from childbirth while your hormones are already starting their menopausal roller coaster, you are not alone. So if you want to see and grab the full breakdown of all these overlapping symptoms and figure out your game plan, grab the chart I put together. It's linked in the show notes. I promise it'll make so much more sense when you actually see it laid out. And let's keep this conversation going. Share this episode with your family and friends, your mom, your obstetrician, your naturopath, whoever you want to. I would be honored if you would share it, because the more we talk about this, the more we can expect real answers and real support, and maybe someday even some real research for women in this area. I just want to thank you so much for jumping in today. Be well.
Thank you for joining me here today on the Menopause Midwife. If you'd like more information or to work with me, feel free to check out my website and book a wellness consultation at ohm406.com. Be well.